So it wasn't a secret at all that Apple was going to release a bunch of new Macs this week, and it's kickstarted that with new iMacs overnight. And I have a few quick thoughts. Haven't had hands-on time, haven't had review time yet, but just some quick observations on what they've announced and what it really means. And look, in many ways, this is a spec bump kind of deal, but there are a few interesting standouts. One of the biggest ones, I feel, is actually not the M4 chip itself. I mean, that should be a faster system, up to 1.7 times faster for daily productivity and up to 2.1 times faster for demanding workflows, according to the Apple press release. But what really caught my attention is that all the new iMacs now ship with 16 gig of RAM, rather than the 8 gig that's been the entry-level spec for Macs for a while now. And that's good. The shift to Apple Silicon brought with it some impressive productivity gains for sure, but it also shifted the internal design to what is effectively a single blob of silicon that combines the CPU, GPU, storage, and RAM, meaning that there's no way to upgrade the RAM on any new Mac later on. So going upscale here is a very, very good move. But of course, the entry-level models have their limits, some of which feel a little artificial. And this isn't a new deal for Apple, so it's not entirely surprising, because while all the new iMacs have the M4 processor, the entry-level model, which will cost $1,999 here in Australia, drops to an 8-core CPU and GPU, but also just 2 Thunderbolt 4 USB 4 ports and no Ethernet capability. And you can bump that model up to 24 gig of RAM, and that's also true for the $2,399 10-core model, but if you want 32 gig of RAM, you have to opt for the 512 gig storage variants. I strongly suspect that there's absolutely nothing stopping Apple making 32 gig possible within the silicon blobs that make up the entry-level models. It's just that it's more cost-effective and or more profitable for it to reserve that for those higher tier models. I'm also never getting an actually accessible iMac, and this one has bugged me for a long time. This is also not new, but whether you opt for a 2 USB port or a 4 USB port iMac, you're going to have to reach around the back to plug anything into it at all. Mac Studios can have front-facing convenient ports. It's not that hard to spin a Mac Mini around, but not an iMac with a screen that size. Basically, because the design trumps the practicalities here, and I'm not a fan of that. There are also new peripherals, hurrah, said some, but not really me. The key difference here is that they're swapping out Apple's Lightning connector for USB-C, and while I think that's a good move generally, I will be honest here and say I'm not personally a big fan of Apple's external keyboard and mouse combinations. That keyboard especially works fine on a laptop because, of course, laptop keyboards need to be flat. But if I'm using any kind of external peripheral, I want something with a little bit of travel and nuance to it, and you just don't get that. I won't really start on the Magic Mouse, though, because we'll be here all day, and I think most people are already aware of things like the bottom-facing charging port, which is now USB-C, of course, but it's still bottom-facing. The new iMacs go on pre-order today and will be physically available in Australia from the 8th. And we can expect a whole bunch of other Macs, probably also arriving on the 8th, if I'm guessing correctly, to arrive this week, and I might do quick videos on those. And those are my quick thoughts. Let me know what you think, if you're really keen on the iMac, or you think it's a good deal or a bad deal or whatever, in the comments below. But thanks for watching, and don't forget, as every other YouTuber says, and as we're legally obliged to say, or Google will beat us, to like, comment, and subscribe.